Welcome to Unconventional. I'm your host, Bill Tessar. Unique stories from entrepreneurs that have failed, picked themselves up, been knocked down, picked themselves up again, traveled roads that few travel. It's about digging into the successes that people have found in real estate, financing, lending, and the like. Sometimes success comes from seeing opportunities where others don't. Our next guest today is a master at that. Eddie Wilson has been called the king of exits for a reason, with a track record of owning over 125 companies and successfully exiting 120 of those. He's built a career in taking risks, scaling businesses, and creating value. He wears way too many hats to mention, but among the big ones are CEO of Think Realty, where he employs real estate investors. He's the chairman of the AAPL, the American Association of Private Lenders, largest organization of its kind. He's the president of Affinity Worldwide, a family of companies dedicated to supporting entrepreneurs. And he's the founder of Because Coffee, which is a business that blends quality coffee with community impact. Eddie's story is about innovation, it's about determination, and the courage to pivot. From his early days in radio to building an empire across multiple industries, he is a true example of what it means to be unconventional. I'm thrilled to welcome our guest and someone I consider a friend, Eddie Wilson. Welcome, Eddie.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on the show.
I did have a chance just before we got started to congratulate you, but I thought I would do so on camera. If any of you don't know, Eddie Wilson is an Ohio State. Is it the Ohio State? Is that the way you say it?
It is the Ohio State University.
Ohio State University alumni. And as you all know, his football team just really demolished all of the teams in the playoffs from game one through the national championship. And Eddie, you shared with me, you got to go to the game with your middle son?
Mm-hmm. My middle son, we got the chance to go to the championship game, and it was a game of a lifetime for sure.
Have you been to one of those before?
No, I've never been to one of our champion. I take it back. I went to the year that we lost to Florida many years ago. I think that was 2006. But I've never seen us win the championship. I've been to hundreds of Buckeye games, but never been to a championship game where we've won.
So pretty exciting, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Very exciting. Yeah, it was, and to share that with my son, who's also a big Buckeye fan, it's fun. I'm an alumni, so it's natural for me. But then when your kids follow in your footsteps and like the teams you like, to share it with him was, I think, probably more special than just watching my team win.
Yeah, but watching your team win the way they did was pretty amazing.
Yeah, huge wake-up call. We looked so bad in the Michigan game, losing 4 years in a row, which, it's a huge wake-up call. But the team responded, and they came back with a vengeance. And I don't know that I've seen, I know I'm a little biased, but I don't know that I've seen a team as good as the Ohio State Buckeyes were in the playoffs. I don't know that I've seen a team like that at that caliber at any time in my history of watching college football.
100% agreed. And I shared with Eddie earlier that my older boy went to Oregon. He played baseball for them. So I'd consider us, younger one was at UNC. So I consider us, kind of a Duck family. And on New Year's, we were all together and we were all ducked out and super excited. And by halftime, we were going like, what the hell just happened? I think we were down 30 or something like that. And so they steamrolled over what everyone thought was the best team in the nation, and they did it so easily. Yeah, right about now, my older son's going, you really didn't need to mention that. Like, enough is enough.
Don't bring it back up. Yeah.
What's got you excited today?
What has me excited today is we have a lot of initiatives where we are building some massive enterprise value under my new private equity firm, which we just started 2 years ago, called Collective Influence. We've got about 23 assets today, and I'm rolling up a bunch of service-based companies tied to the finance space and more traditional and personal finance, and a lot of tax prep and CPA firms and things like that. And that's really exciting, to build enterprise value. You know what it is to build enterprise value, and then to be preparing for an exit in the foreseeable future. It's exciting, and it's exciting how we're building it today.
Yeah, it is kind of amazing. you're normally on the other end of the mic,
Mhm.
edifying folks like myself and our companies, and trying to put the light on them. And I think I said earlier, Eddie, that every single time we spoke, and you always do such a professional job of making someone look better than they actually are. So thank you for that. But every single time I walked away from those interviews, I'd go like, this guy's got a story, and I'm kind of fired up about getting into it and sharing it with others, because when you start thinking about what you've actually done, and you're a young man, like you got plenty of road ahead of you, not just behind you. It's almost unbelievable, and it all kind of started. I think you started in radio. Is that right?
Radio and television, yes, sir. I started in my 20s in radio and television, and I built a program. My very first exit was actually a television program that we sold to Fox. They gave me some seed capital to really chase my dreams. So yeah, I started in corporate America and cut my teeth there, and then once I had enough capital, I went on my own.
But you transitioned from radio. Why real estate?
I'm a third generation real estate investor. My grandfather's real estate investor, dad's a real estate investor. And so when I first had my original capital, the first exit I had, um, I bought some things that a 24-year-old would buy when you have some money. And my father called me and he said, "What are you doing?" It was a sports car and a beach house, and he was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" I said, "I'm enjoying life. I had this exit. It's been great." And he said, "You're a third generation real estate investor. Like what are you doing? You're buying depreciating assets." And he was like, start thinking about what you want in life and start trying to get to a place where your passive income gives you that, so that you can live with freedom to create whatever life you want. And he said, "You've got this amazing opportunity. Go create some passive income." And so I actually sold the sports car, got rid of the beach house, and went right back into real estate investing. And he and I started building student housing in Ohio. And that was my first foray into real estate investing. We started building some assets together. I still have all those assets. They still perform very well. But that really, really captured my attention, was like, oh man, if I could use real estate as a leverage point to create the passive income I want, then I can do whatever else I want without liability. And so that was the first kind of initial step I had into real estate investing.
So I didn't know about the sports car story, and the more you and I get to know each other, the more similar stories we had. I came from a very lower middle class family, which we really didn't have much at all. And when I made my first buck, I too bought my first sports car. It was a 328 GTS convertible Ferrari, and I lived in Simi Valley, so there were no Ferraris. And at the time, and I was, I think, 21 or 22. I really thought I was the coolest, most successful person in all of Simi Valley. What I was really doing was pissing off a bunch of other realtors that were in the space for 20, 25 years and hadn't reached that kind of success. And you don't realize that when you're young. Then you get married, have kids, and drive a Ford. So I never got back to the Ferrari, but it is interesting how young people think. You do halfway decent, you get a couple bucks, and you want to reward yourself. And
Right.
very similar. So you did mention that you still have some of these assets. Are you a buy and keep for life? Do you ever flip any of your real estate, or what's your thought around that?
I I'm a buy and hold guy, mainly because I really have this theory, and I really have three buckets of my life. I have what I call my active income, and this is all the companies that I have. And so, the companies I'm building with enterprise value that make good money, they're solid, profitable assets. They produce the capital that then allows me to play in my next bucket, which is my passive bucket, which is real estate. So I really look at real estate as a long-term passive opportunity for me. And then it rolls into my third bucket, which is legacy. And so that's where my trust and my nonprofit and all of that exists today. And so my passive then rolls into that. So, for me, I would rather keep the assets as long as they're performing. There's been some interesting things that have happened, though, over the past 10 to 12 years where I have had to sell some assets, not because I needed the capital, but because oftentimes, like let's say, I'll give you for instance right now, I've got 8 of my short-term rentals in South Florida up for sale. The reason I have them up for sale is that they've appreciated so much that even if I were to refinance them and pull the capital out, um, the rental income that's coming in from them can't cover the debt service. And so even in the equation of me losing potentially 39.6% in a capital gains scenario, now I won't do that. I'll 1031, I'll move them into another asset. But even if I were to lose 39% in taxation, I still it still plays in my favor to actually sell these assets. And so that's happened to me 2 or 3 times. I sold a big portfolio of single family houses in Indiana. There was the same thing, just the long-term rent scenarios wouldn't cover the debt service if I were to refi them and pull some of the cash out. And so I've had some assets that have appreciated very, very, very well. Now, in the multifamily game and in that space, when I'm playing the value add game, oftentimes I do have to trade those assets when I'm 5, 6 years into that, because again, it makes more sense to sell the asset, recoup a lot of the equity, and then go play bigger. And so I prefer to hold stuff forever. And so I constantly rolling up and trying to buy more Class A, typically trying to buy bigger and better houses all the time in my single family portfolio. But yeah, I think when I leave this earth, I think I'll have thousands of doors. Right now, I have around 4,100 doors.
So you already have thousands of doors.
I have thousands of doors, yeah. But I it's not going to be some scenario where I sell them off and then dump them all into a trust. I really like a real estate as an asset to both build wealth, to keep your wealth, and ultimately to protect your wealth as you pass that on to generations to come and to the things that you're passionate about.
Do you, in the real estate asset class, do you have one particular subsection that you like over others? Do you like luxury real estate? Do you like more affordable housing? Do you like the multifamily? We've talked a little bit about multifamily in the past. Like, do you have a personal preference today?
Today, it's multifamily. And that's because so many people are trading these assets at a loss. We've seen a lot of you and I have seen a lot of big financial institutions that have struggled with multifamily for the past 3 to 4 years, as liquidity standards have kind of changed and things like that, and the performance of these assets have not been great over the past 3 to 4 years. So buying these assets right now, I'm buying them for 70, 75 cents on the dollar. And the lending institutions will catch up. In 6 months, 8 months, a year from now, they'll catch up. I always say real estate investment, you're ahead of the curve. And then on the capital side, you're always behind the curve trying to prove the model. And so today I like multifamily because I am speculative. I, though, follow the chondritive wave. So I kind of follow the model that Warren Buffett follows when it's the actual economy kind of cycles. And so for me, I'm typically investing in the asset class that is the rising asset class in the wave or in the economic cycle. And right now, I feel like that's multifamily. I would have told you probably 2 years ago that I was getting heavier into warehouse space. I was getting heavier into commercial. I was, getting heavy into affordable housing. Today, I'm seeing the opportunity in multifamily.
So I mentioned earlier in the intro that you're known as the king of exits. And Eddie, as the CEO of Civic, under Wedgwood umbrella, we had a rather large transaction where we were acquired by a publicly traded company. After balance sheet sweep, we sold for a 9-figure dollar amount. Now, what I would tell you is there's an awful lot of lawyers. There's an awful lot of people. There's an awful lot of diligence. And there's an awful lot of time, even when all parties are motivated to get to the end zone. And we did that. And we did it successfully. And that took a lot out of a lot of people. And so, like, for someone our age, if someone told me they had done that 3 or 4 times, I'd say, like, that alone, you can write a book. How how do you possibly get in and out of businesses where you would even consider it an exit over 100 times in that
Mhm.
period of time of life? Like, how do you do that?
Sure. Yeah. So I think that most people don't understand how I do it because they don't understand the framework by which I operate. The 76 of those happened in 1 year. And these are true assets. These aren't just LLCs. These actually were companies with, employees and with capital. And due diligence, on one company is a lot. However, I had the structure of I owned 86 companies up until 2019, and I sold 76 of those in 2019 for a little over $1 billion, but I sold 76, and oftentimes they were grouped together in because they had common clientele or customers. It was easier to group 5, 6, 7, 8 of them at a time. My biggest exit was the insurance company, and with that went 4 or 5 entities that were all complementary to that entity. And so that's kind of the model. Is I don't typically build one asset in one vertical and sell that one asset. I'm typically building a community, doing data science on that community, building assets that serve that community, and then typically selling in groups. And so, for instance, I have this theory, and the theory has played out well for me in that, the private equity firms, there's $2 trillion in liquidity sitting in private equity hands today, and they need yield really, really bad. So they're willing to buy. And I get calls every 30 days or so saying, what do you have that you're ready to serve up to us? They can't go to Main Street and buy a $1 to $3 million company. They need companies that are doing 20, 30, $50 million that are their valuations over 100 million to pull into their portfolio, because they actually need functional companies that they can add their secret sauce on top of and get what they need out of it. For me, I'm willing to go all the way down to Main Street, and I'm willing to, like right now, we've purchased 3 tax planning firms in the past 60 days. One in New York City, one in Charleston, one here in Jacksonville. I've started getting deeper into the insurance space. We started buying and acquiring there. And so I'll roll those up, and oftentimes they're still individual entities, but I'll roll those up and I'll exit those. Now, I right now have 23 assets on the books. When I pull some of those assets together, we'll be back down to 19 or 18 or 19. But what I'm doing is I'm serving the whale. So like I'll go get the minnows on Main Street. I'll go get the $1 to $10 million businesses. I'll find these distressed capital, distressed people businesses. I will then aggregate them together. I'll create performance in them, typically by adding systems. Like my Empire operating system creates a systemizable process on these businesses. Then I'll serve those up to the whale. So it's kind of the minnows become the mid-sized fish. The mid-sized fish then get served to the whale. So I'm typically dealing and buying the small cap stuff. I'm turning them into mid cap and I'm selling them into large cap. And that is the space that most people don't want to play because they don't have operational efficiency. Where I do very well is buying a company that's $1 million and turning it into a $5 million company. I don't like startups. I don't like bringing things to life. But I love distressed assets that really just need operational efficiency and some leadership and some capital. And you can make those assets move very quickly. So, for instance, in the last 18 months, we've sold 4 companies. We've sold 4 of those for 111 million, I believe, is the number on those. My business partner and I. And I've owned those 4 assets for less than 3 years. So, I'm moving at an exponential pace, and I have buyers that will consistently buy off of me. You think about going back to the person that bought, Civic. If you had the same type of entity that they already purchased from you, and they already know, like, trust you, and know your operational structures, and are used to how you do things, selling them additional companies wouldn't actually be that difficult. So I will sell the same private equity firm assets over and over and over again.
So, what do you narrow down the space you focus? Is it all the financial industry, insurance, financial services, originations, acquisitions? What, like, where's your thought process? How far outside the lines will you go on that?
We play in just about any space that I believe there's opportunity in, because the operational side of what I do is really replicatable or replicable, really in any industry. So, for instance, like you'd mentioned that I have the coffee company. The coffee company I built and brought coffee in from around the world, created a roastery, started retail shops, built kind of a viable model, went out and we've infused about 5 million into that. And now we're building shops all over the Southeast. I'm already having conversations with the private equity firm in New York City that's giving me my pre-valuation on a certain threshold that they want me to get to, that once I hit that, they're ready to buy. And so I'll play just about anywhere that the private equity firms, I'm essentially reverse engineering it from what they want. So I like the financial service space because that's where private equity firms are playing. You see a lot of people that are trying to do roll-ups in the service-based space, like HVAC, plumbing, electrical. That is red ocean right now. I wouldn't touch it. I just wouldn't touch it from a roll-up standpoint, because they're getting lower valuations on the aggregate today. Everyone is trying to roll them up. And so I reverse engineered that out, and it's just not someplace I want to play. But we've done it just about everywhere. We've done it in technology. We've done it in mortgage. We've done it in tax and insurance. I like the financial service space because my base of community that I serve really needs that. So, we have what's called the world's largest business tour called Aspire. We have, 80,000 small businesses that are a part of that community. And by and large, that 80,000 small businesses that are in that community desperately need financial services. And so they need, they've got a $3 to $5 million business and they're tired of H&R Block experiences. They want an Ernst & Young experience, but they're not a $50 million business. So how do they get it? And for us, that's what we're hyper focused on giving them right now.
Wow. Is there one particular business you're involved with underneath your umbrella that excites you more than any other?
It's always the one I'm currently working on. I can't help it. I'm a deal junkie and love. I get I get knee deep in everything I'm involved in. But probably the biggest one I'm most excited about is coffee. And the reason I'm excited about coffee is I really turned the corner about 5 years ago and started doing everything from what I call a cause capital or capitalism perspective. I'm a capitalist. I believe in profit. I believe in the best person survives, best product wins. I like the capitalistic environment that we get to enjoy every single day. However, I say I'm a cause capitalist in that I believe that the profit that I create should go make impact on the world somewhere else other than just my pocket or the people that are employed's pockets. And so the first business I ever built that was truly cause based from the beginning was my coffee company, in that I pledged that every bit of profit that I receive, I would just donate and give away. And so it was really the first big cause capitalism push that I went into, where I said, if I make millions, I'm going to give the millions away. And so that's why I even named the company Because Coffee. We've got a great product. We only serve the top 2% of the world's coffee, the quality, but also it's got an amazing cause, and that's impact others, which is feeding centers, orphanages, clean water projects.
You've been doing that for a while, right? Does that go back to like 15 or 16?
2013 is when I founded that. And I've been doing that for quite a while, but we've had an exponential increase in the past 2 years as I've really focused the effort and energy of my businesses pushing those initiatives. So we're in 103 countries now, and it's just had exponential growth over the last 2 years.
Um, you ever lose money on a deal?
All the time. Yeah, I've lost money, but for me, one of the great life's lessons that my mother taught me, actually, she's an entrepreneur. My father's an entrepreneur. My mother's an entrepreneur as well. So she owns her own business. Is that in the valley, in the loss, if you can find gratitude for the lessons learned, then it becomes a catalyst for future growth. So every deal that I've lost money on, I've lost in my very first exit, I probably was taken advantage of, I would say to the tune of 30 million. And that should have been in my pocket, but the way that it happened, I was for me, it was like, I just didn't know what I was doing and I was playing out of my league. I even found gratitude there, and the gratitude that I found there was the lessons I learned, which, ultimately, now I have the moniker Forbes gave me of the king of exits. And the reason is because I sat on the wrong side of the table that day and decided I'm never going to sit here again. When I sit on that side of the table, I'm not going to take advantage of people. I'm going to create win-win solutions and situations for people, even in their worst day when their company's not surviving. Like, I'm still going to give them the dignity of creating value for them as they maybe walk away from something that they've poured their life into. And so, for me, I've lost a lot of money, but I will tell you that that money that I've lost isn't money lost. It is invested in the education that I have today that's granted me success. And the reason I can successfully say that is because my mom taught me gratitude. She said, hey, instead of moping and getting frustrated over the loss, find gratitude in the lesson and move on. Like, find a way to allow that to propel you to something greater.
Yeah, it is. It is true, Eddie, that if I just think back really over the last few years of, what our company went through with Civic and PacWest failing and that whole thing, I'd say when you're going through it, it's probably as painful of an experience, whether it's losing money, losing people, losing a brand or direction and the like. But when that is behind you, it is really one of the most propelling, energizing, motivating things that you just can't get in a book. And
Sure.
I think one has to actually go through it to appreciate what you're saying or what I'm saying. And if you didn't have the benefit of doing that, you would have to trust guys like you and I.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that you entering into deals, making sure that somebody on the other end of that transaction wasn't going to experience what you experienced when you didn't have that same sort of either backing, guidance, or just perspective on how to close a transaction most opportunistic for you. Making sure that that doesn't happen to other, I think, is special, Eddie. I do think it is a differentiator of you, and I do think it's about really why people like to do business with you, like to partner with you, like to be associated with you, because you are looking out for others. And yeah, when you do that, everyone wins. You really do win that way. I've been accused of leaving an awful lot of basis points on the table for trades with my trade partners. And, my feeling has always been not winning those negotiations, but leaving enough on the table so that when you come back, people are excited about picking up the phone, excited about the relationship. Economically, it makes sense for their organization. It's not all about you. And I just think it's just a much better way to live your life than just winning
Sure.
everything all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I did a recent podcast where I likened business unto war. And I shared kind of the similarities of war and business. And there's a lot of similarities. But in today's kind of business, the economics of business today, you can't treat it like war in that think about this. I've purchased well over 100 companies. I've invested in 80 some passive companies. Um, if I would have taken advantage of every one of those people and we didn't find a solution where it served us both, I would have 100 enemies out for blood that can't wait for my demise. Well, you do that one time, you might be able to live with yourself and move on. You do that 100 times, and now you're spending your entire life looking over your shoulder, and
Can't
that's
walk
not the
into a
life I want
restaurant.
to live. Yeah,
Right?
I would rather, and I think that's the legacy I want to leave behind is all the people that said Eddie came into my life and my life was better. It was richer. We succeeded together. I don't want a bunch of enemies. And I think that people doing business in today's economy need to take that same ethos, you don't need to leave a wake of bodies behind, you better find a way to make it a win-win or else you're going to lose the fulfillment in the win sooner rather than, later. It's going to be a wave that catches you. And so I think that there's a lot of people out there, especially in the private lending industry, they don't leave enough meat on the bone. Like they're out for themselves, and it will catch up with them. Like you better make sure that there's enough room for everyone to win or walk away, because it's a short-sighted viewpoint on how to do business that will catch you sooner or later.
Yeah, 100% agree, Eddie. So we had a shift politically. That just took place this week, same day you guys won your national championship. And not to make this a political discussion, but how are you viewing like your strategy with acquiring, building, and exiting businesses, your real estate strategy, your associations that you're growing on an annual basis under this new administration and the changes that are coming down the pike
Sure.
daily? Right in the first 3
Yeah.
days, we've seen a lot of change.
I'm optimistic. No matter where you sit politically, I think what you have to understand is, no matter what you feel like, you perceive or believe about Donald Trump's values, at the base, he is a businessman, and he does think about the economy first. He doesn't, he may have his political agenda and he may not agree with it, but in the end, his business agenda is always pro business. And, I expect and have huge optimism in where we're headed, both in the real estate marketplace. I mean, you have a real estate investor that is, the president today. And so he's going to think about the housing market. He's going to think about the economy. He's going to make considerations for that. And so because of that, I'm very optimistic. I really feel like the best days are ahead. I really believe that the housing market, a lot of the issues that we're currently seeing, will find solutions soon. I'm really optimistic about his taxation plans specific to businesses. One of the greatest things that ever happened was when he was in office the first time and he took our corporate tax down to 21%. That left a lot of room on the bone for me to hire more people, create more jobs, invest in our products more, invest in our clients more. And I'm really optimistic there as well. I think that a lot of the taxation programs that he's building will stoke business. And I think oftentimes people, they're so worried about tax, like, well, if we reduce the amount of taxable dollars coming into the government, then how will the government survive? I'm on the other side of the spectrum. I think that we should pull money away from the government and give it to our people. The way you give it to your people is through job growth and job creation. I would much rather give an employee $100,000 a year than to give the government $100,000 a year, because the employee now creates movement in the marketplace. It changes affordability at every angle. And so I am very optimistic, and I'm making choices in my business and in real estate specific to the optimism that I feel.
Yeah, you and I have been pretty good about being in alignment with the way we view the world as it relates to real estate, and I think I share all your sentiments to a T. I too am very optimistic. I've been bullish on real estate for some time, and I know we have insurance issues across the United States, and we have some new tax assessments from a property value perspective in some states that are hurting investors. But one thing we've always been in alignment in is we have a shortage of housing. And, whether you're buying a watch, a car, anything on the opposite end of supply and demand, it's going to drive values up. And for me, I really don't see real estate going anywhere long-term but up. People need housing. We're millions of homes underwater. You and I have been saying, really beating the same drum since coming out of COVID. So I think like 21, maybe the numbers have changed, really to the detriment, not to the betterment. But I'm in alignment with you. I was in Wall Street about 3 weeks ago, and I was dealing with our capital partners and some securitizations and the like, and they were calling it a Trump bump, regardless of, naming it whatever you want to name it. But they were calling it a Trump bump. And I think there was a sentiment there, too, Eddie, that was very similar in opportunistic, enthusiastic, and saw where a business mind might be able to trickle down some economics where us normal folk can feel and can benefit others when we're driving a business with employees. And I'm certainly hopeful of
And
that.
when you look at the cabinet he's putting around him, I mean, these are brilliant business minds. Like whether you like Elon Musk or not, Elon Musk has done something that is just unmistakably brilliant. Like what he's built in Tesla and how he's been able to navigate, both political waters and economic waters. You see people like even Mark Zuckerberg coming back to the table with optimism for business. And you've got, Vivek Ramsey. And I mean, you've got some very brilliant business minds that are coming to the table to aid him and to be a part of this cabinet. And, again, I don't think we should look at the collective whole and make our choice there. I think so many people, because of mass media, are so hyper focused on an individual, a person. Do I like him? Do I not like him? I think that you have to look at the collective whole of what's being put together and say, does that benefit our economy? Does
Right.
that benefit our nation from a business perspective? And I think it does.
Yeah, I agree with you. I want to pause just for 1 second because you've touched on it a little bit, but do you have like a basic business strategy when you're looking at some of these opportunities that you could describe, in a shortened form? Bill, I look for these people in these geos doing these things that I could, roll up this way. Like, how would you describe that in a
Sure.
paragraph?
Most oftentimes, I'm looking at the private equity firm first to determine where they're wanting to spend money.
Okay.
Then I go down to the main street kind of economic landscape, and I'm typically looking for distressed people businesses or distressed capital businesses. I'm not looking for bad products or bad services, right? Like if they've got bad Google reviews or if their product sucks, like I'm not interested. I'm out. But if they struggle because they don't have the right people in the right seats, you've got an entrepreneurial leader that doesn't know how to scale, or they just don't have the capital. I'll get heavily involved in these businesses that have opportunity, have projects, have contracts. And I love those two types of businesses. So I'm typically looking at the private equity firm, and then I'm looking in the space that they're willing to buy. And then I'm looking for distressed people or distressed capital businesses.
I do like that you kind of begin with the end in mind. What are the private equity firms looking for? And is it one particular one, or do you have a handful of them that you bounce across the table with?
Mhm. I have a network of probably 60 big private equity firms, and then a network of probably 100, smaller private equity firms that are just either forming or have formed in the last 5 to 7 years.
And basically, they're in your ear saying, if you can find, create, cobble together something that looks like this, I'm your huckleberry.
Mhm.
Is that effectively it?
Every time.
And have you ever experienced where, private equity company number one says, I want something that looks like this. You go out and cobble all that stuff together, you beautify it, you fix whatever the gaps are, and then you present and they're no longer interested in that and you have to take that somewhere else? Has that happened?
Yeah, it happens often. And that's why I don't build businesses to sell. I build businesses to operate that have the potential to sell. I'm never going to operate a business that doesn't serve the enterprise of my private equity firm, Collective Influence, because I don't take a lot of investor capital, but I have my own capital involved. And so I'm not going to invest in something that can't return capital in and of itself. So if I do have to hold and operate an entity for another 3 to 5 years, or for life, I've had some that I've had for a very long time. And, one of those would be coffee. Like coffee, it's very likely that someone beats us to the punch. Coffee it's a commodity. It's a difficult business. And but I'm going to operate coffee. If I end up with 20, 25 stores and it doesn't sell, I love coffee. I'll just operate it. Like I'm okay with that too. I'm an operator at heart. And so it's easy for me to just keep them in the portfolio if they decide that, they've gone cold on it. But I'm going to build a good, solid business no matter what.
Do you, from a strategic standpoint, try to retain some equity slug in all of these business or some of these businesses that you sell? Or when you sell,
Um,
are you
oftentimes,
out?
oftentimes when I sell, I'm out. My structure is typically that I want control of any asset that I'm involved in. Now, I've moved to more of a passive investor role. There's a lot of businesses I see that just need growth capital, but they've got a good balance sheet. They've got, good P&Ls, and I'll just throw capital at them, but I don't operate them. But if it comes into my portfolio and I'm going to operate it, I'm going to operate it my way. It's very specific the way I operate. And typically, the private equity firms, they want to do a bunch of crazy things once they get it, and they'll disrupt the flow of how I operate. And I don't always want to be along for that ride. Like sometimes they crush it and sometimes they don't.
Have you ever repurchased anything that you've sold because they've screwed it up?
A few times. I was talking to Dave Portnoy, Barstool Sports, a couple of weeks ago. He was at our Aspire tour, and he sold his business to, I think it was ESPN, for 300 million,
Yeah.
and then bought it back for $1. It's not. I've never had that happen, but I have had hey, we bought your insurance company and it's not going as well as we thought it would. Would you be interested in coming back in as a partner? And I've only bought two companies back. And it really was because like in my companies, there's either the goose or there's the eggs. I have my communities that's the goose, and then I have the actual assets, which are more the eggs. So, like for instance, I have Aspire Tour. That's the goose. It creates 80,000 small businesses. I have a tax firm called Checkmate. Checkmate Tax Advisory. That's the golden egg, right? And so I typically won't buy the eggs back, but I will buy the goose if I ever sell them. And I rarely sell the goose because they're typically the ones that are creating. That's where AAPL is the goose. Think Realty is the goose, right? Aspire is the goose, right? Like they can produce and aggregate the masses to ultimately so that I can build something to serve them.
Moved to like 70%, and banks kind of, fell. Sold his mortgage company for a 9-figure amount, right? It was 100 and some odd million, and sold it to Bank of America, and then bought it back from Bank of America like 18 months later for like 30 million, and then resold it to like Nat Cities for 100 and something, then bought it back for like 20. He did that like 4 times. And it's just that they're interested in buying what you've created. It's beautiful, it's shiny, it produces income, it's socially responsible. They get in and muck it up, so they no longer have what they bought, and they're wondering what the hell happened. And I think you see that an awful lot, which is why I asked you the question if those things have a way of coming back to you.
Yeah. For me, I leave a lot of meat on the bone for the private equity firm because I really care about my employees that are potentially going to go with it. I typically care about the customers. I'm usually heavily involved in the customer base. So I want them to all have a great experience. So I try to leave enough meat on the bone and carefully select who is going to acquire that company. I don't like the corporate raider types, the ones that are going to come in and just create a cash cow out of what I've built to pay their investors, returns. I like the ones that really have a growth mindset. They want to infuse capital, add it into maybe a collective or something that's larger to grow it. That's typically the exit I'm looking for, so that my employees, as well as my customers, are served in the transition.
Are there key stakeholders in these companies that participate in the equity event, so they stay on in the earn out through some period of time for the cohesive transition of power, if you will?
Sometimes. Every once in a while there are, in this new tax firm there are, but by and large, my kind of MO has been buy the owner out of the business completely. And oftentimes, because it's a distressed people business, it's usually the owner has a maverick mindset. They've grown it, they've bootstrapped it, they've got it to where it can go, but they don't understand corporate structure. And so they don't know how to get to the next level of growth. They're a good doer, but not a good manager. And so because of that, oftentimes I buy them out, and they get their exit when I acquire, and then I take the risk. Most business operators don't have the same risk tolerance that I do. And so usually they can't stomach the length of time or the investment capital or the changes that need to be done in the business to ultimately get it to the success that we need it to be.
So shifting to a personal question, walk me through a typical day from the moment you open your eyes, around what time. Take me through your morning, your afternoon, your evening, weekday, weekend, just kind of the day in the life of Eddie Wilson.
Yeah, I'm very, very intentional with my time. One of the big, my mother taught me gratitude. My dad oftentimes taught me time management and how to, manage fear. And so I believe that we say things like time is our most valuable asset, but we actually spend more time managing our money than our time. I spend more time managing my time and let the money side take care of itself. So that begins at 6 a.m. for me on a normal day. I travel a lot, so that gets interrupted often. But 6 a.m. if I'm home, and then it usually is some sort of, self kind of care process, prayer, meditation, home gym. I spend some time in the gym just getting rid of, all of the stress and all that we feel. It's easy for me to just kind of release that in the gym. I get into the office typically around 9. A lot of the meetings in my offices will start around 8 with all the managers and the people that are involved here. And then 9 o'clock, I'm typically here. I'm typically not taking meetings until about 9:30. And then I'm more of a data analyst at the top. So I spend about 30% of my time just looking through data. And we have very specific stoplight reports and what we call cash flow pro formas. We reconcile every dollar, every action, every week. In that every Tuesday, I know exactly up until Friday at 5 p.m. on the previous week what happened financially and how that impacts my entire year. And so I spend a lot of time in looking at those iterations. My belief is the way you solve business problems is you give yourself a chance to make 52 great decisions, meaning weekly data, weekly information to make great choices. Big companies, they typically make their choices every 30 days. So they only get 12 chances at a year to make good choices and fix the issues that they've created. We have 52. So a lot of data analyzation. Then I spend a majority of my time with my top level leaders. Those leaders would be either the asset leader themselves, so like the person running the company, or I have a layer above them, which would be like my COO, my CFO, my CRO, Chief Revenue Officer, and then CIO, Chief Investment Officer. And so I spend time with them. So it's usually tied to the asset or tied to the top tier management. And then the kind of last piece of my day is I spend a lot of time selling the vision of our company. So I spend a lot of time in general town halls, and I teach a lunch and learn every other week to our entire staff, where I just teach them my philosophy on business and life. My day usually ends around 6 o'clock. And then typically I'm trying to spend time with the family. I have 3 boys I spend a lot of time with. And then, I travel at least twice a week right now. So I'm on the road 3 to 4 days a week. Usually almost every weekend I'm traveling. I get off one weekend a month, but I'm putting in on average 70 hours a week right now. And that I like that pace. Like I'm 45. I have no desire to slow down. I'd like to put the pedal down a little bit more. I'm growing things for a purpose. And then I do like kind of the evening time I'm spending typically with the boys, or I do a lot with my nonprofit. And so, we're in 103 countries. And so oftentimes when I want to talk to someone in China, India, wherever that we're doing something, we have 13 representatives outside of the country. I'm typically doing that in the later evenings because then time aligns up with them. And then I do a lot of writing and speaking, and add all of that into the mix as well.
How many hours of sleep you get a night?
Usually 6. I
Yeah.
do really well on 6.
Keep a diet.
I do. I eat well, eat clean. Coffee is probably my biggest vice.
Yeah.
But I eat clean just because I like the way I feel when I eat clean.
It is amazing. Um, I had a past life where I was a competitive bodybuilder where, you're watching every piece of food that's coming in, the time it's coming in, the amount that's coming in, and what's going out for exercise. And then I've had those moments where, it's been wine and cheese as many nights as you could possibly fill in. And I will tell you, going in your mouth, it never feels any better. It's just once it's in your mouth, it feels horrible. And so I tend to agree with you. It feels much better being in shape and eating right and having a clear head than knowing that you called it a wake of bodies earlier, a wake of cheese and wine behind you, though there are good times for that as well. Have you
Sure, for
ever,
sure. And I don't deny myself. I don't live this life that's so rigid that I don't get to enjoy it. I am specific. I'm intentional, and I allow myself periods of time to just enjoy things. And so, but I never want that to get in the way. Like there's always a balance there, and I never want it to get in the way of my productivity, my mental capacity, things like that. And so I'm very cognizant and intentional.
have you ever done a SWOT analysis on yourself where you've said, okay, I'm going to keep this 92. I always call it 92 because I think if you're 100% real, you start offending yourself. But I keep it 92, and I'm going to go over what I think my strengths are, my weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Have you ever done one on yourself?
I have. I'm a big fan of SWATs in both business. We do those on a quarterly basis, and I do like the idea of doing it personally. And yeah, I think that emotional intelligence is such an important thing in a leader, and especially the leaders around me. And emotional intelligence is oftentimes just your ability to dissect down and live and be honest with who you are. And some of that self reflection is so important. And I will tell you that, it's important for you to do a SWOT on yourself, but it's also important to make sure that you validate it with those around you. Hey, this is where I see my strengths. Here's where I see my weaknesses. Here, threats is a big one, because I put ultimate trust in just about anyone, and I oftentimes need to be very aware with who I'm trusting and allow my team to step in because that's a big threat.
It could also, I mean, you may argue that it could be a weakness if you put so much trust in so many people that aren't part of your inner circle. You didn't say that, but if you
Correct.
did, then maybe that would be, introspective of yourself. Like I love talking about my strengths. It sucks when you have to do
Mhm.
the deep dive on the weaknesses because it's humbling and especially as you get a little bit older, you have, less time to fix or maybe less willingness to fix. Do you have one
Mhm.
thing, whether you would call it a New Year's resolution or something that's top of mind that you'd like to see a little bit improved on your end, which might fall into the weakness bucket?
Sure. Yeah, this year, I try not to get so hardcore on like resetting my goals and reframing everything I'm doing and picking a word and that type of stuff because I really want to live that life every day of my life and be very, like I spend a lot of time each quarter doing just that. So it's not like a big reset at the beginning of the year. It really is just like another quarter in my life. But I will tell you that this year, one of the big things that I've decided, that I need to do is that because we've grown exponentially over the last 2 years. This private equity firm, most of the businesses in here are less than 2 years old, which means that most of the staff that's here have been with me less than 2 years, which means that all the business relationships I've built tied to those businesses are less than 2 years. And oftentimes, when you're in a secure environment, you start to weed out the people that don't need to be in your life, and you begin to allow, like you make room for the people that need to be in your life. And so, because of this ever-changing new environment, I've noticed that I've let a lot of people into my life that really shouldn't be there. There's an influence level that I really don't want. And so I go back to kind of that ideal team player model, in that the people that I'm going to allow into my life and allow influence in my life this year are people that are possess these three characteristics. I want hungry people around me. I want people that are passionate, moving, driving. I want humble people around me, and I want smart people around me. So to me, what I'm doing is I'm looking at the people that are around me, and I'm moving off of my plate people that have massive ego, people that are complacent, people that struggle to advance, And so to me, the kind of mantra that I've been running with mentally and in the mornings is, who is in my life and are they hungry, humble, and smart? Hungry, humble, smart is the right equation for the ideal team player. That's the people I want in my life. That's the people I want to employ. And so that's the big push for me in this Q1, is
I love
to
that.
make sure that I'm aligning with those people.
I love it. That's fantastic. I'm sure you're walking down the halls and people are looking, going, "Holy shit! I hope I don't fall on one of those three lists." I'm hungry,
Yeah.
not complacent, team player.
Yeah.
Anything keep you up at night right now?
With with a bunch of new businesses, I would say the cortisol, dump on a daily basis is: am I making the right choices? Am I setting enough capital aside for their growth and their opportunity? Because I'm trying to grow a bunch of them all simultaneously. And those are the things I think that keep me up most, is like, am I, being 30 and taking a ton of risks didn't bother me. Being 45, having a lot to lose, and wanting really to give all this to the nonprofit so that we make impact around the world, actually causes me more stress than anything. And so I think it's just making sure, there's this constant thing in my mind, just saying, did you calculate this right? Do you have enough set aside? Are you taking on too much liability? Those are the equations that are playing at night that keep me up sometimes, for sure.
Yeah, I call that maturity. It's interesting, Eddie. We as you know, out in Southern California, we experienced fires like I've never seen in 50 years out here, and I've been through a couple earthquakes. Fires have been somewhat regular in Southern California, but nothing like this. Like the Pacific
Right.
Palisades is completely wiped out. Malibu will never be the same.
Yeah.
Altadena doesn't look anything like it used to. And then there's some surrounding areas, and it hit us. It affected us personally in our company, and then our customers. And so we began this reach out. We put together 1,000 backpacks with all of the items someone would need when they've lost it all, and we set up a GoFundMe. And the weirdest thing, Eddie, like the weirdest thing for me is I literally stood up a company with all of the folks that were part of what we had created at Civic, and we did it in pretty short form, and we did it with an awful lot of folks on day one, and that didn't create the same amount of stress that was created within when we set up this GoFundMe and I just wanted to raise money for other people. Like I've never put that kind of pressure on myself to do good for others the way that this is, because I just see the carnage all around us and you just can't do enough. But it's interesting to hear about your story. And I asked you it on a personal level with your business, and just not wanting, whether it's risk or taking on too much or making, the wrong decisions. I kind of translate that to me personally and what's happened in SoCal, and go like, man, we're pretty lucky, guys like you and I. We're pretty lucky for our family. We're pretty lucky for our team. We're pretty lucky for what's between our ears. And there's an awful lot of folks out there that aren't. And so, it was a short reflection. I digress and apologize, but it just kind
No,
of
I 100%
hit me.
agree. I 100% agree. We're so grateful, or we're so lucky, and I'm so grateful for, the things in life that I have, and never want to take that for granted. It's to your point, we have about 4,300 children that we feed and educate on a daily basis in our orphanages and feeding centers around the world. And again, that's the stress I feel. Like, they can't provide. It's just like you helping all these people. It's like, well, who's going to provide that for them if you don't? Well, that's way more stressful. I actually get way more stressed out about the orphans than I do about the great employees I have in this building, because if these businesses failed, they all would be fine. They're amazing, beautiful, smart, great people, and they would find a job tomorrow. But the people that rely on you for sustenance, like that's a big
That
that's a
you
big
go
thing.
away, they go away.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
a tremendous burden. I mean, yeah, I get it. Like, that's unbelievable. And God bless you for doing that. Hey, as we close out, if there was one piece of advice that was given to you that you'd want to pass on to everyone else, what would that be, Eddie?
The one piece of advice that I find myself giving consistently today is that life and its successes are not about where can I go, or even really where can I and the people around me go. Um, Fulfillment is really about reaching your potential and making sure that you've taken others to a place where they could not have gone without you. It's the reason I named my nonprofit Impact Others. Is I really want to spend my life making impact, and I will say that I've had $1 billion exit, and it really didn't change my life that much. Another car, another house, another vacation, whatever it is, really has never brought fulfillment in my life. But achieving what I know I'm capable of, and then turning around and taking others with me, getting them to a place where they could not be without me giving to them, really is the greatest source of fulfillment. And so the advice I constantly give is, as you learn, as you grow, as you find success, don't do it alone. Find someone else to make an impact on their life, because then you can have success and you can feel successful, because fulfillment comes in helping others get to where they need or they want to go, and they couldn't go, without you.
Yeah, you the man. Like, I feel blessed to be associated with you, and grateful that you took the time to chit chat with me today. If anyone wants to get a hold of you, how would they do that?
One big
Google.
thing that I'm
There's a thing called Google. Type in my name.
Google. No, I'm dedicated to answering a lot of the people that reach out. And so Eddie Wilson Official, I spend time on a daily basis just responding to DMs. And I do that because I want to sow into others. So if they have business questions, if they have thoughts, ideas, I'm very active. I don't post on my social. I don't answer the comments on my social. I have a team that does that. But I do jump on and I answer DMs consistently and on a daily basis, because I want to be a service to those around me.
So just slide in on your DM. Is that like, is
Slide
that
in the
teenage
DM.
talk? Just
Yeah.
slide in on the DM. I appreciate you, Eddie.
We both might be too old to be using that jargon, because I'm not even sure what it
I
even
don't know. I stumble in on people's DMs. I've never slid into anything.
means. I just fall in. Yeah.
Exactly. I appreciate you, pal. Happy New
Thank
Year. I
you.
know it's a little belated. Congrats on Ohio State, and all the best of luck and wishes for the businesses you're involved with.
Same to you. Thank you so much.
God bless. Are you ready to define success on your own terms and hear from those who have done exactly that? Follow us on your social media platforms at CV3 Financial and join the Unconventional crew for inspiring stories and insights. Go be unconventional.